Hello and welcome to this month's Leaders Live session, where we're going to be talking about the BCP budget. My name is Councillor Millie Earl. I'm the leader of the council, and I'm joined today by Councillor Mike Cox, who is the deputy leader and portfolio holder for finance. And I've also got Adam Richards here, who is the director of finance at BCP Council. And because budgets can sometimes get a little bit technical, we've got him to help explain some of the more complicated bits if needed. So just to start on our budget, every single local authority needs to set a balanced budget. It's pretty much one of the most important things they can do in their financial year. So we are currently setting the budget for 25 and 26. I will say it's a very challenging financial environment out there. I know that our businesses and residents are also feeling the pinch of that as well, and we are too as a local authority. But what we've got as a proposal is a balanced 3-year budget. So it looks at the next 3 years and how we deliver the services that matter to local people in that time, but we don't end up in a financially unsustainable position. So this budget is proposed by the Three Towns Alliance administration. It has come to overview and scrutiny. It's gone to Cabinet on Wednesday, and it will be presented at a full council meeting on Tuesday, the 11th of February. I will just say, when it comes to presenting a balanced budget, we have set certain principles, I think, as a council, which we really wanted to uphold. They include things like keeping our communities safe and clean, and also protecting the most vulnerable in our society, and encouraging our towns really to thrive and flourish in the best way that they can. And that's what those are the principles that underpin the budget. So Councillor Mike Cox is as portfolio holder, he's going to tell you a little bit more about the detail of this budget, and then we'll get on to answering some questions. Mike.
Thank you very much, Millie. And one of the key principles in terms of setting the budget was actually to make it sustainable in the long term, and that was actually to not take money from reserves. The previous 3 budgets had taken £30 million in order to balance the budget from reserves, and the last 2, this one and the previous one that we've put in place, takes no money from reserves. In fact, adds money to our reserves. So that's a key financial principle that we've undertaken to do. In terms of the budget, that we've actually made good progress in terms of savings throughout the council. We've had a plan that we took £38 million worth of savings, some of them quite difficult, last year, and we've got another nearly £8 million worth of savings this year. And we've done that by trying to work better in the way we actually deliver the services. So in order to reduce the effect on residents as much as possible. We've also asked residents that if they can take on some of the responsibility, and in fact residents have asked us to actually take on services which we can no longer deliver because of financial constraints. And just as an example of that is the splash park at the Quants in Christchurch. We could no longer afford to keep that going, so Christchurch Town Council have taken that on and actually have delivered a better service and at a lower cost as well. So they've actually saved money from what BCP were doing. So that's excellent. We've also found alternative means of delivering services, whether it's community safety officers or whether it's installing renewable energy at the 2 Rivers Mead Leisure Centre in Christchurch. But all councils, there's a huge elephant in the room, and all councils are facing growing gaps to deliver rising demand for SEND support and the reducing funding from central government. And we've worked alongside our local MPs, both past and current ones, and so in order to get the government to help us to get government to understand the issues that we're facing and to find a solution, so that we can help the residents of BCP. One of the big issues that we've had this year and over the last few years is the cash flow issue in respect of SEND. The deficits in which the SEND services have accumulated, and the government has insisted that we accumulate, actually has ended up with the fact that we are going to run out of cash. As a council, we're going to run out of cash. And so we've had to go to the government and say, this is actually, because of your policies, this is what's actually happening in this council, and you need to help us with the cash flow. And as part of that, we're going to borrow £57.5 million in order just to keep that service going for the next year, which is a huge amount of money, which is a burden not just to the taxpayers but also to the residents. At the moment, BCP spends about £356 million every year across 400,000 residents, which equates to about £1 million a day, which goes out in council services. But approximately 2/3 of that money is actually spent on people, supporting people with the most need and keeping children and vulnerable adults safe. The rising demand for these council services, is huge. There are increases in costs, and we're having to. That has all been added to by actually the government itself, who a few months ago increased the national living wage by 6.7%, and also increased the national insurance. Now they did promise to give us some grants, and they have given us some grants to offset that. But the total cost of those two initiatives has cost the council about £20 million, but they've only given us a limited amount back, and so we're actually short by some £12 million, over £12 million in next year's budget, which we have to find from our resources. The specific assurance we were given in terms of national insurance was that they would cover the national insurance in full. Unfortunately, they haven't done, and actually we're now, in that just one little thing, we're £2 million, over £2 million short from the full recovery of that. In order to meet these demands for services, we are going to have to increase council tax by about 4.99%, which is in line with virtually every other council in the country, apart from there was 6 that actually got an exceptional approval to charge a higher rates of tax. Some of them are charging between 7.5% to 10%, but we're going with the rest of the councils across the country and setting it at 4.99%. The living wage increase alone is an increase of 6.7%, which is great for those people that are receiving that. But the proposed increase in council tax is 4.99%, which is less than that increase, and that's for the most. Obviously the national living wage increases for those people who are on the lower wages. So that's really a summary, Millie. If you want to stop dealing with the question, we want to start dealing with the questions as they come in. I think we've got some pre-submitted questions, and I suspect the first one, from looking at my sheet, is for me. So
I was just going to come back in, Mike, and so thanks for introducing the budget. Obviously, this is a Q&A, so we're going to answer questions on several different things. But if there's anything particularly related to the budget, we'll try and come to that one in this live session. So, Mike, yes, you've got this first one from Isabel on Facebook.
Yeah. So Isabel's asking, some people barely can afford food and health this season. So why are we increasing council tax again, especially when increase is not adequate to minimum wage earnings? I mean, it's a fair question, Isabella, but as I explained earlier on, actually it's less. The 4.99% is less than the increase in the national living wage, and we do try and help those that are struggling to meet council tax. There is a household support that the government, if you do have any problems, you can always contact the council directly, and we can provide that support.
Thanks, Mike. I have a question from Steve Tallamy from Facebook. Oh, and I can also see that Aaron has added a very, very similar question, which is about devolution. So a bit of a break from budgets, however, it is still relevant because a lot of devolution was linked to investment. The question is, what steps need to be taken and the implications to BCP Council due to the government's decision not to be included in devolution, and with Heart of Wessex not presently going ahead. So this is a really important question and something I'm extremely frustrated about. We had a very, very tight deadline given to us from government to make a decision on what our footprint should be via devolution agenda, which is passing power and money down from government to mayoral strategic authorities, so a new layer between sort of local government and national government. We worked very hard in that very short period to speak to colleagues both in Wessex and in Hampshire and Solent, and we ended up with a decision at full council, very democratic, really, really good debate across the chamber to request to join the Heart of Wessex devolution bid. However, the government recently announced their priority programme and they didn't include Heart of Wessex. So we're really, really disappointed. I think we put forward a very comprehensive proposal. We've been working with the leaders and officers in the Wessex areas for months now to pull this together. All we needed really was that democratic mandate to put it in writing to government. So the reasons that we've had are unclear. We're trying to get more information on what they were expecting or what we should have done, but we haven't had clarity on that yet. What I will say, though, is we're going to continue working with partners in Wessex, so in Somerset, Dorset and Wiltshire, to find out what the government are after and continue on this journey. But it is very disappointing after a lot of work and a lot of resource actually put into devolution that we didn't make it onto the priority programme. Okay, so Mike, I think you've got a question from Jeff on Facebook.
I do. Jeff's asked a question on Facebook which says, perhaps it is time to abolish council tax on rented properties and just charge the freeholder. This could be combined with a total reform of tax and welfare, which can reduce administrative costs and monies lost to fraud. Perhaps then we will pay less tax and have better government services both nationally and in BCP. Will BCP support such a vision to government to reduce the council tax in years to come? Well, Jeff, it's a good idea. In actual fact, BCP doesn't really have a stance on this. This is a central government decision as to what they do with council tax. I mean, our own position in terms of politics is that council tax is out of date and needs to be reformed or abolished and another system put in place, because it's grossly unfair to a lot of people, and it's actually out of date because house prices have gone up significantly since that was started. So I would welcome any ideas to reform the council tax position. It's not really for BCP to get involved in that. I think it's for the political leaders of the different parties to put forward their suggestions, and hopefully now that we've got a new government, that will happen. They've already committed to actually reforming the business rates next year, so we'll look forward to see what happens on that. In terms of I think you mentioned fraud. I think there's very little fraud goes on in terms of the council tax. We do have good systems in place to stop that. So, but good ideas, all welcome, and we'll certainly pass them on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I've got a question from Judy on Facebook, which is, I live near to a property that has been in violation of permitted planning for over 2 years. What is the message you are sending to residents if you cannot enforce planning rules? And why shouldn't everyone just do whatever they want, as there are absolutely no consequences in violation of these laws? So thank you, Judy, for getting in touch about that. And it sounds like you're talking about a very specific issue, and you're welcome to contact me or to contact Pip, who is our manager in planning enforcement on planning enforcement at bcpcouncil.gov.uk, and she'll be able to look at that particular place. In general, though, we do have 7 active investigating officers in our planning team. I actually hold the portfolio for planning, so if you do have any issues, I'm the right person to come to in terms of the lead in our cabinet. And I do know that they work incredibly hard on breaches across the conurbation. What I would say, though, is they're not there to effectively punish people for breaking the rules. What they need to do is remedy the problems that and the harm that has come from breaches of planning. So often what they will do is prioritise based on the harm caused by a particular breach, and then enforce whether if it is proportional and if they're going to be able to get an outcome from it through taking enforcement action. But on your particular case, get in touch with me and we'll have a look at it. So Mike, question for you.
There is from a very interesting name called @PunkRockBilly on X, and she's asked how much of taxpayers' money goes towards your pension funds. Well, I can confidently say that 0 amounts of taxpayers' money goes on my pension scheme, and indeed actually every other councillor's pension scheme, because councillors just get an allowance. They don't get a salary as such, which would be subject to a pension. So we only get allowances, we don't get pensions. Actually, if the question may be related to the staff, obviously the staff, like every other person in the country, the staff get a pension contribution. The local authority, local government pension scheme means that we have to contribute 19% of the individual salary towards their pension scheme, when that's similar to every single local authority up and down the country. In addition to that, there is at the moment a contribution going in as £4.3 million, which is payable as a fixed sum in order to cover some shortfalls in historical contributions. So that's another burden that BCP is having to cope with.
Thanks, Mike. And Adam, I think you have some information to add on this kind of pension issue. And I often hear this rumour that, inflated pensions and everything else. It would be interesting to hear a bit more about how it relates to staff, as we've established councillors don't get a pension contribution.
Yeah, in the sense that from an officer perspective, 19% of an individual's salary is paid as a contribution towards their pension via the Dorset Local Government Pension Scheme. Clearly that relates to those that choose to be a part of that scheme. And then in addition to that, the council makes a one-off payment of just over £4 million in 25-26 to cover the back funding in regards to that pension fund deficit that exists in regards to the overall position on the local government pension scheme and our element of that.
Thanks, Adam. Right, I have a question now from S.A. Slocum on Facebook. And it's a question about 20 miles per hour. So is it possible, please, to have a map and not a list of names? Was there an assessment in respect of access of emergency critical care and implications of 20 mile per hour? So I think that this relates to the Boscombe and Folkestone Safer Streets, Safer Roads Fund. Just reading the question and considering what may have come out recently. So we have been through quite an extensive consultation with that scheme, which is capital funded from government. They've basically looked at a list of roads across the country which are some of the most dangerous, and decided a couple of years ago to allocate some money to try and make them a little bit safer. And they gave us some for that particular area. The reason why I think it's a list of names is because it's now going through its legal consultation process. So we run a consultation as a council, so residents can feed in the first instance, but then the legislation around traffic regulation orders means that it also needs to be run as a list of names in the newspapers, and that means that that basically it's a second stage of consultation to meet the legal implications of that. It's a bit frustrating. I have actually been lobbying with government on the fact that we have to go through the TRO process when we should be able to incorporate that element into our general consultation to make sure that we're getting people feed in at the right time, and be able to put their thoughts forward much earlier on in the schemes rather than at the point where we're investing money in having to advertise it through the legislative process. However, what I would just say is 20 miles per hour is an exemption for emergency vehicles, so there's no reason why an ambulance or a police car or anything else can't go much faster if they've got their blue lights on, and as long as it's relatively safe to do so. I would also say that there is currently a consultation process open for this particular scheme, so it's worth having a look and seeing what you think of the plans and how to feed it in. And of course, residents know their areas better than anyone else. I'm really keen to hear from people who live and work in those direct areas to be able to get the best for residents. So Mike, back to you. Question from
Luciana Grezzi on Facebook has asked the question, why do you continue to allow hybrid working when the Civic Centre sits empty after its refurbishment? What accountability do those employees have that work from home? Luciana, it's not empty. Effectively, we have 3 Civic Centres at the moment, and we've got Bournemouth, which is a fairly busy office. There are some days, I admit, where there's not that many members of staff there, but it is generally quite busy. I'm in there quite a lot, so I can see what goes on there. But in terms of the other civic centres, proposals are being put forward at the moment to sort out Poole Civic Centre and put it on the market. And at the moment, the Christchurch Civic Centre is in the final stages of being marketed. So, but in terms of Bournemouth, that is a relatively busy office, and I think a lot of people enjoy working there when they can do. Now, in terms of BCP's policy, they do follow this smarter working guidelines, which enables employees to work in whatever care location is best in order to provide the service. Clearly, bin men can't work from home, but a number of staff can do. But they are all accountable. There is a performance framework, a performance management framework for all employees, where their managers do set objectives and put their targets in order that they have to meet, which are aligned to the council's priorities and service plans. So, each member of staff is monitored in that way, and so we, in order to work smarter, effectively, and that's what we do at the moment. In my own business, we work in a hybrid way, and it works very well. Staff like it, and obviously we try and get the best out of the staff that we can.
Thanks, Mike. So we're going to move on from the pre-submitted questions to the live questions now. However, our team will be on comms all day to come and answer what they can of those. So if your question hasn't been answered, we'll try and get back to you with something. So the live questions, I have got one here from Susan. Hello, Susan Lennon. Where is the 9.1 million going to for the homeless? So this is a really good question. We've recently received a really good sum of money. We actually had 8.7 million to tackle a range of homelessness and rough sleeping issues. This has come from government. It focuses on things like prevention work, rough sleeping support and accommodation, and drug and alcohol treatment. It has, just the other day, it was announced that that's going to be topped up by another 500,000, which takes us to that 9.1 million. I really do think we do as a council, we have a really strong team that work within our homelessness and rough sleeping area of the council. In fact, we've had some real good success recently in reducing down the number of families in bed and breakfasts. It's practically eradicated now, so we're not relying on sort of those short-term inappropriate accommodations for families who are in need of additional housing at very short notice. With the extra money, I think there's some real good work we can do around preventing people from actually getting to that point where they are going to be sleeping on the streets or going to need to go sofa surfing and so on. But I'm also really excited about the fact we can use it for specifically for things like alcohol and drug treatment, also things like supporting people's recovery and tackling some of those sort of systemic issues that compound the very complex homeless issues that we have in our area. So thank you, Susan, for that question. Okay, I've got a question from Daniel Brooks here. Mike, I think I'm going to ask you to answer this one.
Yeah, Daniel's asked, when a person is running low on money, they prioritise the essentials. Absolutely right. Why do you not do the same and stop wasting money on unnecessary nonsense? Well, I suppose that depends on your definition of unnecessary nonsense, really. I don't think we waste money as the council. I think sometimes that we can always improve the way money is spent, and that is a constant process that we go through. And that's why this year we're putting forward savings of nearly £8 million. Most of those £8 million is actually doing a service more efficiently than the way it was done in the past. So it is a constant process to make the way we do things more efficient. So I suspect the unnecessary nonsense that you might be talking about is things like cycle lanes. Well, we don't fund cycle lanes. That is not what we do. The government funds the cycle lanes. So that's just want to make that very clear.
Thanks, Mike. It can be very frustrating to understand that kind of difference between capital funding we get in from government, but also money that we raise from council tax to deliver services. I'm just going to bring Adam in because I think you can probably explain this a bit better than I can.
Yeah, I think it's just to explain with regards to the council's funding. In a lot of cases, the government will give us specific grants to be spent on specific issues, and those grants come with very tight, stringent conditions as to what it can and can't be spent on. So it's just to recognise that when it comes to things like homelessness grants, we couldn't suddenly decide to spend it on waste collection or on our parks. It has to be spent very, very, very much in line with what those detailed conditions are attached with that grant. With regards to spending on essentials, the one thing I would highlight is the fact that 2/3 of the council's net budget is being spent on adult social care and children's social care. So clearly providing services to those most in need within our community. Thought were probably points worth making.
Thanks, Adam. That's really useful. So I've had a question here from Andrew Curley, who has asked, is there any update on the Oakdale site, either to clear it and remove the Porto cabin? So thank you, Andrew, for getting in touch about this one. I think it's quite an exciting site down there. It hasn't been used to its full potential recently, and I think it's very important that we get something developed on there. We've had I know that the ward councillors have recently had a meeting and that we're soon going to be going out with plans. The idea is that we would have an extra care facility. So this would be for looking after the most vulnerable adults in our communities. So people in need of additional care, very specialist care, would be able to live there. But it would also include things like a community room which can be used by the wider community there, and potentially even something like a cafe. In my ward, I have an extra care facility which is in Trinidad Village. It is a brilliant scheme, and it's added a huge amount to the lives of people who live up there, but also to the wider community as well. So I think that would be a really good use for it. It's just a case of looking out for what the plans will be, and once they're out, making sure you engage with the consultation. Thank you.
And I think there's a question there from Gerald Maguire, who's asked the question, what are BCP doing to reduce waste and costs? I think we've already answered that question just before. And also, how can you justify increasing councillors' wages? Well, as I've already explained, councillors don't get wages. We get an allowance, but we don't get wages. In terms of the councillors' allowances, there was a proposal to increase it, but that was a proposal from an independent panel, which was set up, nothing to do with BCP, nothing to do with councillors. And they reviewed the situation up and down the country, and they came up with a set of proposals, which did lead to an increase, because there hasn't been an increase for quite a long time. We decided not to take that at the moment, because at the moment the council is going through a pay and reward, and we certainly didn't feel it was appropriate for increases of council allowances, while the council's pay and reward scheme has not been sorted out. That is an extremely complex scheme that what we're trying to do is to make sure that everybody gets paid an equivalent level for the work that they're doing across the council. Because when the council was set up a long time ago now, sort of 5-6 years ago, different people were being paid different amounts for the same job, and that's not right, and we need to sort that out first. So that's, hopefully that answers Gerald.
Thanks, Mike. I was just going to add to that if anyone is interested in councillors' allowances or what we claim in expenses, that information is all published online, and it's made publicly available to you to go and have a look, so you can see what we've spent on travel, on various bits and pieces. Generally, councillors don't claim for those additional extras, only if there's something that they absolutely necessarily need to go to, but it is there if you do want to go and have a look and see anything additional that your councillor may have incurred as a cost. I've got a question here from Catherine Eden, who has written, in supporting residents to do more to help ourselves, would you be willing to look at a scheme such as the London Borough of Ealing, where residents can I think get bags and a broom to clear leaves and pine needles in their area and arrange for bags to be collected by the council? So Catherine, I love these ideas. I often do list picks in my own community, really enjoy getting out and about, and I'm sure lots of your councillors are leading in their communities on these kind of schemes. There is currently a scheme which is called the Ward Improvement Fund. It's open only, I think, for another week today, but it's absolutely worth getting in touch with your councillor, because that money can be used for things like litter picks in communities, providing bags, running events, running community days to clear up any equipment that's needed. And already, if you do go out litter picking and you bag up lots of different bits and pieces, bags, that kind of thing, you can leave them on the side of the road and just notify your councillor, who will get the message to the council, and they'll come along and collect your bags for you. So quite often, if you finish a litter pick, you might see some bags on the side of the road. They're just waiting for collection from the grounds maintenance team, who will come round and chuck them into a van and take them away for you. But I love that idea. We need to get communities empowered to do more, to think about how they can make our areas just better places in general. So I'll have a look at what they're running in the London Borough of Ealing and give it some thought as well. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just having a very quick look at any more questions that may have come in.
I think there's a question there from Tommy Stranack to do with Beta Park. I'm going to leave that one with you, Millie, because you're the pill bill.
Let me have a little look. Oh yes, when are funds going to be available to repair the crumbling culvert at Beta Park Pool, the outlet from Pool Park Lake? The area looks really untidy now and is a pinch point for cyclists and pedestrians. Not a good image for our beautiful town and park. So it's really sad that we've had this amazing new cycleway and route put in along Beta, but as soon as you get to that bit, suddenly it becomes a real bottleneck. I'm not exactly sure where we are with that. I know that there has been work though between the council, with Wessex Water, our flood and coastal erosion team, and a few other partners to look at how we can deal with it. So I'll take that one away, find out if we are expecting any additional funding to be able to fix it, or if we're going to be pulling on our own resources to deal with the issue. But thanks for raising it, and I completely understand and agree with what you mean down there. It's very frustrating.
I think we've got a question. Glinster316 is asking, why are we spending on money? Why are we spending on unwanted schemes like 20 mile an hour, which will cost money? Also, how much is being spent on unachievable net zeros in 2030? Have we done due diligence on price EVs? I think in terms of the 20 mile an hour zones that are being consulted on at the moment, once they have been consulted, and if people want them, and that's the key, if people want them, then actually, they will be funded through the government's National Transport Travel Plan. So that's, I think that answers yours. In terms of unachievable net zero targets, I think that's a political question. Some people think we should be aiming towards it. Some people don't. We think we should.
Thanks, Mike. I have a question here from Aaron Gibson, which is, Bournemouth appears to have developable sites now laying waste. I've not seen a crane above Bournemouth in a long time now. Is Bournemouth open for business, or is there no appetite following the closure of future places? So just to reassure you, Aaron, there is absolutely appetite for investing in not just Bournemouth, but in Poole and Christchurch as well. In fact, I was writing yesterday some thoughts down about this for when I'm at a conference next month, and what we actually have it as ambitions for Bournemouth. And you might have seen that these are coming through at the moment through both overview and scrutiny and cabinet. We've got some really exciting regeneration sites that we're making decisions on, including the power station site in Poole, the BIC, Winter Gardens, and of course Poole Dolphin Leisure Centre. All really key sites that are desperately in need of a level of regeneration. So those are the ones we're focusing on within our portfolio. However, on a larger scale, I'm really pleased that I've been able to speak to various investors, various businesses, talking about our needs, particularly in terms of affordable housing, social housing, and really exploring whether there are any partnership opportunities to bring that investment to our local area. And of course, because I have planning in my portfolio as well, I get to see some of the brilliant developments that are coming through, really worthwhile, really good at basically delivering the homes that we desperately need, but also contributing to that street level regeneration that we want to see, and which of course will bring Bournemouth up to date and provide a really thriving economic base for us to be able to do what we need to do as an area. So just to reassure you that we are really very much open for business, and I'm really pleased to be working on that as the leader of the council. Okay, so I think, I've just been told we are very nearly at 1 o'clock, so we are going to wrap up there. I was just going to add finally that we do have, we started this session obviously talking about the budget. I'm a great advocate of residents getting involved in the democratic decisions that councils make. This is a full council meeting on the 11th of February. So residents, members of the public are very welcome to come along to submit questions or comments in advance. Or of course you can watch online via YouTube. And hopefully on Tuesday, we'll have a really good debate and set a balanced budget, which will see us through 25-26, and hopefully beyond that as well. So I'm just going to say thank you to Mike and Adam for joining today and answering lots of questions. And of course, we'll be coming back to the questions that haven't been answered today on the various social media streams that you have commented on and try and get round to as many as we can. So thank you.